Hey everybody, welcome to Battle of the Forms. We're going to talk about Microsoft Forms versus Teams approvals versus Power Apps versus SharePoint Forms, and compare and contrast their pros and cons whenever you are building a form and you decide that you need to get started and are not sure which technology you need to use. I'm Laura Rogers. I'm a Microsoft MVP, like he mentioned, and my company is IW Mentor. It stands for Information Worker Mentor. It's an online training company. So our agenda for today, we'll talk about what form products we're referring to. We'll talk about, kind of what they are and what they're about, just kind of a level set to let you know basics about them. And then we'll talk about their comparison factors. And then we'll do kind of pros and cons based on a few factors that I've selected. And then I'll do some little demos of each product as I talk about their pros and cons. So first of all, here are the examples. We have Teams, lists, Power Apps, Forms, and we're going to talk about creating online forms. And it's an important skill for any of you that are looking to collect data from your audience. You can create surveys, you can create forms, you can create request forms, feedback, registrations, any kind of forms like that, online forms. They're an effective way to just get the information you need. But when you're creating a form, or before you even get started, it's important to consider the questions that you need to ask and the type of data that you need to collect, and then the audience that you're targeting, who will be filling out the forms. So with Microsoft Forms, SharePoint Forms, Teams, Power Apps, you have several options ranging from simple to complex. And then once your form's created, and this kind of is different for these different products, you'll be able to share it with your audience via email, sometimes even social media or a link on your site, whether it's a website or a SharePoint site. And then responses are going to be able to be collected in different ways depending on different types of products. For example, they can be anonymous when it's Microsoft Forms. Most of these other products don't have an anonymous functionality. So we'll talk about things like that as far as what to consider when you're choosing which product to use. So it's really important that when you're talking to the business about what their requirements are, that you ask them the right questions and then look at these comparisons to understand which direction to go. So here are the factors that we'll be talking about today. It's the ease of use for the creation of the form, the design considerations as far as how it is to actually build the forms, and kind of not really just building the form, but what kind of different options that you have, like the customizability of that product for the forms. How custom can you make them? And then we have the concept of data handling and collection options, and then the integration with other apps in Microsoft 365, mobile accessibility, pricing, and then permissions, which I'll rate each one of these with, see these little smiley faces at the bottom as we go over them. Of course, they're obvious as to kind of what they mean, but we have a couple of these concepts like permissions where it's not necessarily a good or bad, it's really just different, and how is it going to work for different products. So I tried to use the smiley faces the best I could to kind of rate these different factors as we go over them. So the first product that we're going to talk about is Microsoft Forms. So it's very simple. So this is the most simple tool, very simple to create these forms. They have great analytics available, and it's very easy to customize. You don't have that much complexity as far as logic. It does have branching logic that you can do. It doesn't have any kind of advanced design. Basically, as you can see on the screen, your form has just basically questions just listed down the page, one after the other. So there isn't a lot of functionality as far as rearranging the way the fields look on the form, but it does. They are lovely. You can create them very easily with almost no training, and it's very kind of easy for people to pick up to create the form. So this is, I think, going to be the most easy, just to quickly create a form and implement it and have it up and running within, an hour or so. I mean, it's very, very simple. So here are going to be the pros and cons for Microsoft Forms. I'm not sure where my little smiley faces went. My pros and cons for Microsoft Forms are going to be the ease of use for creation is easiest. So like I mentioned, it's just going to be very simple, like my mom could do it. It's not complicated at all to just type your questions and pick what kind of questions you have. The design customization interface it's not that customizable. It's just a list of questions going down the page. It's got some sort of some colors a little bit, but it doesn't have an extreme amount of customization. It's got, sorry, my little animations are out of whack. It's got some data handling collection options it's very simplistic. So the thing about Microsoft Forms is that they're one way. That is the key thing to know about Microsoft Forms, by the way. That is, to me, the biggest thing that's misunderstood about them is that the data is one way. You're only ever submitting a new form with Microsoft Forms. You can't ever go open an existing form and make an edit to it or add another, answer another question or anything. It's just, it all goes straight, basically just into a spreadsheet out of the box. And it is, so you do have options as far as creating a flow to go do something with the data, disseminate the data. It has a lot of built-in options for the way that the data goes into a spreadsheet. But that's why I kind of gave it a meh, it's okay as far as the data collection, because mostly because it's just one way and you can't ever just go open one up and like make edits to something that someone has filled out. Like a lot of the things that I like to do is to have an approval process where people send a form through an approval. So the people that are doing the approval like to be able to open up the form that somebody filled out and see it and approve. But with Microsoft Forms, since it's just one way, the data goes in and you can do other things with the data, like put it in a SharePoint list and have people open it up in a different sort of in a different product, but that's kind of the awkwardness that I'm referring to. So, and the integration and automation with other Microsoft apps, that's kind of the same concept. That's why I gave it sort of a meh little straight face, is that it is a good bit of work to, you'd have to create a flow. You'd have to create like a separate database or a separate list for the data to go into. And it's a lot of extra steps. So you'd have to create all the questions in the Microsoft form. And then if you want the data to go into SharePoint, as far as where it ends up, then you'd have to create all those exact same questions in a SharePoint list and create a flow for the data to go there. But again, this huge pro is that it's very, very simple. Mobile accessibility, I give this a 2 thumbs up, awesome, because you can just send somebody a link, just anybody. So if you do have the ability to have anonymous forms, which means anybody in the world can just be sent a link and just fill out the form. That's an option that you have when you're publishing your form. So it makes it very simple. You can even share a QR code with someone and they simply click the link and start filling out the form. And then as far as pricing, it doesn't have any extra pricing. I know there's like maybe a premium version of Microsoft Forms, but the one I'm talking about, it isn't any extra cost. So I don't necessarily like to use the word free with Microsoft 365, but say if you have like an E1, a very basic license, you can use build Microsoft Forms, and of course, anybody can fill them out. Permissions that one's kind of an interesting one because it's got pros and cons. So you could just have anonymous forms, which is great. So then you don't have to worry about giving end users any permissions to the data to where it's going to end up. And so that's actually a good thing, but then it might be sort of a negative because again, you have that sort of awkward step of having the data in 2 different places. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all these slides. I have a demo of Microsoft Forms, but I'm just going to go ahead and go through all the slides first and then do the demos just to kind of make it flow pretty smoothly. So the next product that we're comparing is the Microsoft Teams Approvals app. So here's a picture of it, and it's built into Teams. You can just go to the little list of apps down the left side in Teams and just add approvals as an app. It's a way to streamline approvals in your organization. It's a feature that allows you to create custom approval workflows, automate approvals for various processes. You could use it to create approval requests for expense reports, time off requests, any kind of other quick, easy process in your company that requires approval. You can, when you're building custom approvals for your organization and sharing them with your whole organization, you can even hard code certain people into the approvals, or you can leave it free form so that when someone's filling it out, they can select who the approvers are. So you can do it either way. So let's talk about a little bit of the pros and cons with this one. You have it, as far as ease of use, it's very, very easy. Actually, this product it's exactly the same thing as Microsoft Forms. So as far as building the form, it is Microsoft Forms. So the interface is exactly the same. You're just doing it in this little window, basically in Teams. So you are just building a Microsoft form. So that, again, is very, very easy to just add the questions, create the questions, and very simple to understand how that works when you're creating the questions. And it even has templates that you can pick from for when you're building forms for your company, like maintenance request templates and things to give you little ideas, and you can even customize those templates. And again, I give it the same rating with the design customization. It's not extremely customizable, but it has, you can give it pretty colors, and it's lovely and seems very modern and slick. Data handling and collection options. This one, I gave it a big frowny face, because there is a way to go into Power Automate and find the form by using the ID and create a flow that gets the data and then do something else with the data, but it is not obvious. It is not apparent. You pretty much have to go hack into this stuff to get the actual data of what people are filling out in the form. So it's very pretty. It's very slick. People can quickly fill out a request. It goes to all the people to approve things just within Teams. They can see the form that was filled out, click approve at the bottom. At the end of the process, they can click to save it as a PDF, which will take that basically the exact way that it looks in Teams, and it'll just take like a screenshot of that and save it as a PDF. Even if there's attachment, the attachment is just like a little icon of the attachment. But that's kind of your output just out of the box, is a form that goes through a process and then can get spit out to a PDF. So it's pretty painful and awkward to do something with it so that the data goes somewhere useful, like all the columns of data that they filled out. Typically, you want to do something with that data, have it in a database, be able to report on it, things like that. That's the part that's extremely awkward with the Teams Approvals app. And then you have integration and automation with other Microsoft apps. I gave it the same frowny face because again, it's a very painful process to go in there and dig in and find that data in those forms, in those sort of customized Microsoft forms. And then mobile accessibility, I gave it it's sort of the second level after the biggest smiley face. The second smiley face is it is easy to use your mobile device to fill out these forms. You just have to go into Teams, so it's several clicks. So if you're just using a plain old Microsoft form, it's just one click. You click the URL of the form and you start filling it out. With this one, you have to go into Microsoft Teams. You definitely have to be authenticated. You have to go to the Approvals app. You have to either click New Request or click to look at something and approve it. So it's a few clicks. So I'm just going to keep that in mind. And then the pricing, again, same thing as Microsoft Forms. It's all built in. It's not going to be any extra cost. And then permissions, it's good. I mean, you do have to be in Teams and you have to be in your organization to be able to do these. And if your approval's happening, it's really just going between the person who's sending the approval and the people who are approving it. And those are the only people that can see. Just like when you're using the approvals action in a flow, the person sending the approval, the person receiving approval are the only people that have access to that item, to that thing that's being approved. So it's okay. Let's see. I'll go ahead and go to SharePoint list forms. I can't wait to demo this stuff for you. All right, so SharePoint list forms, of course, I love SharePoint. I've been using SharePoint for like over 10 years. It's my favorite. SharePoint list forms are not extremely customizable, though, just out of the box. It's a powerful tool for managing data in SharePoint. You can customize the forms with a couple things you can do. You can ensure that the data is entered accurately, that, such as required fields. You can make sure only the necessary data is collected. SharePoint list forms can be customized directly in the browser, and you can even do a little custom validation to help make sure the accuracy of it. So SharePoint list forms basically can be used to streamline business processes and improve data quality. And you're just doing this directly in the list. So with a Microsoft form, you don't even know where the data is going. You just fill out the form and it just goes. With a SharePoint list form, you're probably most of the time the user's going to the list and clicking the new button, and they're in the list already, and then they can immediately see the item that they just added get added to the list. So it's all right there in one place. So let's talk about the pros and cons. We have, let me get my little icons. It's like I added this animation and then forgot about it. All right, so we have the ease of use. These are very easy to create. You're just basically creating columns in a SharePoint list. As far as customizing it, though, it's it's two different steps. So it's very easy to just simply create some columns in a list and have an out-of-the-box form. But if you need to make it look in a more custom way, like this one on the screen, where you have several columns, you have things arranged a certain way, you have maybe some conditional formatting where things hide and show, under different conditions, that requires JSON and requires sort of a little syntax that you have to use to make the form look like this. So it is, you can't just be like, my mom and be able to create one of these and customize it like you can with a Microsoft form. You do have to know how to get to the spot where you edit the code, and you have to know how to put some JSON in there. Data handling and collection. I love this because it's all already right there. You don't have to do anything to move the data anywhere like you do with the Microsoft forms. They're all just right in the list. Integration and automation with other Microsoft apps. I think it's great. It's already in the list. You can do, again, a lot of flow actions where you can do things with the data. With SharePoint, you can have triggers based on SharePoint. You can do actions to update items in SharePoint. So I think the integration is awesome. And then mobile accessibility is kind of meh because you can use the Microsoft Lists app and even the SharePoint app on your mobile device, but if you've customized the form like this with JSON, it's not going to look like this in the mobile app. So you're just going to get the plain Jane form with just fields going down the screen if you're filling it out on the mobile device. But you can use this SharePoint list in Teams, and it will look customized like this in Teams if you add this list to a tab in your Teams channel. As far as pricing and cost, this one is, I just gave it a good smiley face because it's not any extra cost. It's just part of, you could have something as pretty low as E1, and you can have SharePoint, and it's SharePoint lists are the exact same thing as Microsoft lists. And then you have the concept of permissions, which this one is very interesting because there are so many different things people want to do with the way the permissions work in SharePoint. A lot of the times you don't want the users to see all the items in the list. You want them to just be able to create new items, or you want them to only be able to see their own items, or you want the manager to be able to see their subordinates items, or you have, all these very specific things that people like to be able to do when you're gathering requirements for building your list. But the most painful thing usually is the trickiness around only showing end users a very specific subset of the data that may be pertinent to them. So there's a setting you can use in the advanced settings of a list where you can say, basically the person can only see and edit their own things. But again, usually that doesn't cover the requirements that you have with managers needing to see their people's items and only needing to see a certain department and very tricky things like that you'll come across. So permission, there are a lot of pros and cons with what you can do with permissions, but you're really just out of the box, you have the permissions of whatever SharePoint site that list is in. All right, our next product here is Power Apps Forms. Power Apps is my favorite. It's a very powerful tool for creating custom forms and data collection solutions. I mostly use it for forms for business processes. You have a drag and drop interface. Forms can be created quickly and then customized with your organization's branding. It's pretty much a blank slate. You can customize them to look like absolutely anything that you want. They can be published to the web or mobile devices, and again, highly customizable and can be integrated with hundreds of other Microsoft services. So there are literally thousands of things that you can do with Power Apps Forms, extremely customizable. Just the big negative is that, you know, where you could spend less than an hour creating a Microsoft form and have it up and functioning, Power Apps Forms can be kind of simple and quick, but as soon as you need to do anything slightly complex like logic, you're jumping off the Power Apps cliff of time suck. It's going to suck away all your time. You're going to lose hours of your life, you know, pixel by pixel doing, you know, making things look perfect. And so you kind of have to watch out with Power Apps as far as it's so powerful and it's got so many options and so many design possibilities that it is much more time consuming than the other ones. And it's always more time consuming than you'll expect. So, but I love Power Apps. It's, you know, it's my favorite. And I love the fact that I can do so much customization with it. And it's just, there's always just a point where it's easy. And then all of a sudden the Power Apps cliff. So just kind of keep that one in mind with that. Oh yeah. Somebody in the chat mentioned, anyone remember InfoPath? Oh yeah. I wrote an InfoPath book, I think back in 2010 or so with Dervish Shadrivan. I used to like it, yeah, because I'm not a developer, I'm not a programmer, but yeah, it was great at the time. Okay, here are my pros and cons for Power Apps Forms. I've got my little a lot of smiley faces. So I put a lot of smiley faces on this one. Pretty much everything I think is awesome, except for the ease of use and creation, which is what I was talking about, where you'll lose hours of your life with customizing your Power Apps Forms. But they're great because you have a completely customizable interface. You can literally just start off with a blank slate and you can make it pixel perfect. Data handling is great because you can use hundreds of different types of databases you can use. You can use SQL, Dataverse, you can use a SharePoint list as your database. It integrates with hundreds of services. You can add connectors to it. It's got mobile accessibility because if you create a standalone app, you can just use the Power Apps app on your mobile device and just open that app and people in your organization can fill it out. Now the pricing is it is easy and cheap because with the E1 license, you can create Power Apps and you can use them, but the pricing with Power Apps, the tricky part comes in with what connectors you're using. So if you just use something like SharePoint, just a SharePoint list, Microsoft list as your backend database, there is not an extra cost. But as soon as you start getting to those premium connectors like SQL and Dataverse, that's when it could start costing money. So that one's also kind of it could go either way. So let's go ahead and start doing some demos of these. All right, so the first thing that I have here is Microsoft Forms. So I have gone to forms.microsoft.com to get here, and I have a list of a bunch of forms that I've been working on. I'll just start off with this one's the travel request. So as you can see in Microsoft Forms, this is the interface for creating your form. So you literally just type what you want the questions to be, and you can type like a little subtitle for each question. And you can say whether you want it to be required or not, whether you want it to be a long answer, which gives them more space. And when you're creating questions, I'll just say, like, I'm going to add another question here. It's very easy to pick what type of question you want here, like a choice, text, rating, or a date. And it's very simple to understand. So I just deleted a question. You can also, you can make them very pretty with some styles, and you can also put different images in your questions. You can have an image represent the question itself, or you can even have images represent the different answers here. You can have attachments as well. I'll go ahead and preview this and pretend like I'm going to be an end user filling this out. And start now. I'll just go to Hawaii. And then I think I want to go there next week. And so I am just literally anybody can just have a link and be able to fill this out and quickly pick some things, upload a file. My file here is not required, so I'll just go ahead and submit it. And then the person receiving the responses can see their list of responses and have it in a spreadsheet. You also do have a little bit of logic that you can do. You have the ability to do branching logic, which means if I have like maybe multiple choice, I can make it go to a different question next, depending on which of these options I choose. Like if I choose financial, maybe I'll have another question for them about something in the financial department, that kind of thing. Yes, somebody asked, if you need to have attachments for your form, you cannot have it be anonymous. So because the attachment's going to go straight into your OneDrive, if you create your own personal form, if you create a Teams form, then the attachments are going to go into basically the SharePoint document library in that Teams team. So since this is a Teams conference, I'll show you that really quick. Just on the main homepage of Forms, before you click the new form button, you can scroll down and you can see all the groups, all the Microsoft Teams that you're a part of, and you could just create a form in that group. So you can see I've created 2 forms in Human Resources. And when you create the forms in a group, then you're collaborating with other people in that team, and everybody can share those and work on them together and collect responses together. So just kind of keep that in mind before you click the new form button, that you do have an option to have this group form instead. And that's where if you have attachments, those will go into that SharePoint site. And then there is a way, of course, like I mentioned, to use Power Automate to receive those responses and do something with them, like put the information in a list in SharePoint, or send it in an email, or whatever you'd like to do, or put it in SQL even with a premium connector. Right, so those are just kind of the basics about what it looks like to work in Microsoft Forms to create the form. And then when you collect responses, this is pretty simple and self-explanatory too. I can say, do I want it to be anonymous? In this case, it's grayed out since I have an attachment on my form. It can't be anonymous. It's just there. It's Microsoft's rule. And then I can say specific people. I can get a QR code to fill out this form, and then just be able to share that link with somebody or embed it somewhere. There's even a Microsoft Forms web part that you can use in SharePoint. All right, so I have about 10 minutes. I need to move on to the next product. So that is going to be the approvals so I'm in Teams here, and I go to this approvals app. So you can just add that app by searching for apps and finding approvals here, and you add it, and then I can do a new approval request. And then here are a bunch of these templates that I was referring to. So I actually, since I'm an admin, I actually created a bunch of these templates and distribute them to the organization. So that's why I have a lot of org-wide templates. So I can say I want to do a purchase order, and then test PO. And then in this one, I hard-coded who the approvers are. And then it's just, again, it's a Microsoft form. It's just a Microsoft form in a little window here. So it looks like I've got a bunch of required fields here, and I just send it. So that's going to go to the person. It's going to be a pop-up in Teams, and they can quickly approve it. So I'll go ahead and show you one that I've done already. Let's see, I've got one. I've got Billy here. So I'm logged in as a different user here. I'm logged in as Billy Bob, and Billy Bob is going to do a new approval. No, I don't want to do an update. And this is just a basic approval. So with the one that I showed you a second ago, I had hard-coded who the approvers are when people fill out a PO approver. This one, I'm just going to say I want the person creating whatever the request is to be able to fill in who the approver is. And they can add as many as they want. They can drag them into a certain order, give it a priority. And then when you customize these, it looks just like customizing a Microsoft form. And there's even an option if you're using different environments in your tenant, you could send it to another environment, and I can add an attachment if I wanted to. So let's see. What did I miss that's required? I think maybe I made the attachment required. I'm not sure. This is my form comparison chart that I was going to tell you all about too. No, it does, like the send button is grayed out for some reason. Oh, I didn't give it a name. Test PO approval, basic, there. Okay, so now I'm Billy Bob, and I just sent the approval to me. So you can see it's very, very simple to fill one of these out and to pick who the approvers are. And then I'll go ahead and move Billy Bob out of the way. And then this is one that I filled out. I can see it under requested. And then I can see Billy Bob sent me a request. And so this is what it looks like. I'll go ahead and approve it. And then this is what I was referring to with the way that it looks when you want to save it as a PDF. So either one of the people, any of the approvers or the person requesting it can click Save as a PDF. And the PDF looks exactly like what I just saw on the screen. All right, so that's the Teams Approvals app. And then we also have the SharePoint list and customizing a SharePoint list form. So here is just a SharePoint list called Travel Requests. And I can add a new item, fill out a request. Now, in this case, I want people to potentially be able to fill out requests for other people. So I allow them to select who the requester is. I think I'll pick, and this is a location column in SharePoint. And so I'm filling out all my fields, and then I can even have it appear, like other fields appear when I pick something in a field. So like I picked airline here, and then estimated airfare appeared. Then I pick a hotel, and then I have created logic, so the hotel cost appears. So you have a little bit, I have some columns, I have some sections, I have a little bit that I can do with the way that's customized. So the way that one works is when you click Add New Item, you click up here at the top where it says Edit Columns or Configure Layout. So Edit Columns is going to let you pick which columns are hidden and showing, but Configure Layout, you're going to want to click on the little Help, the little Learn More button here, because this is where Microsoft provides you with all the code. So I don't know any code, I'm not a programmer, but I usually just go in here and copy their code, and it gives you very specific examples. And then you can use their code and then make little tweaks to it if you kind of can figure out, you know, what it's doing, where the colors are and things like that. So this is the header. This is what allows it to have a little airplane logo, and you can let it make it show certain fields from your request. The body, the header and the footer have JSON code. And then the body has sort of a different syntax, but this syntax allows you to create sections. So you can say sections, and again, all this is in Microsoft's example. You say sections, you label each section like this, and then you just simply put the names of each field that you want in each section. And that's how you can customize those. And that's how I got it to look like this and have, you know, a certain layout and have these sections in it. It's just not, yeah, it's just not, you can't customize the really as much of the layout as you can with Power Apps, which is I'm about to show you. Chris said, I wonder if these have the same 30-day timeout as a flow would have. I don't think that they would. I don't expect that they would, Chris, because the thing that's timing out with the other approvals is the actual action in the flow. So these are not really related to a flow. So yeah, so I don't think that those are going to time out like that. They're just harder, much harder to get to the data of the thing that they submitted for that. Okay, the next example I have is Power Apps, and I'll just show you. I have an app that I have in edit mode, but I'll just go ahead and preview this. And again, I'm kind of going with this travel request concept, so you can see the way a travel request looks and all these different products. So we're kind of more comparing apples to apples. And so this is a travel request app that I spent hours and hours on, and I added all kinds of cool stuff to it. And I present the end user with a splash screen. They fill out new travel request. So it shows them a picture of themselves. It pre-populates a couple of fields from their user profile. I have it so that when I pick a department here, it automatically tells me who the approver, who the VP is of that department to go ahead and do that approval. I really like Hawaii. I can go fill this out. It automatically pre-populates with my manager. And then when I submit it, I can have either just directly from the Power App or using a flow, I can have an email go to the next person. And then another thing that I've done in this app is I've built in an approval panel. So I can go to an existing approval, and this one says it's waiting for Garth Fort. I can go to my own request awaiting my approval, and I can see that this one was requested by Billy Bob. I can click approve. I can maybe route it to someone else and send it. And then now it says I approved it, and then now it's waiting for Garth. So there's a lot, again, what I'm trying to impress upon you is the amount of customization, the amount of possibilities that you have with Power Apps, but you're just really weighing it with the complexity of building what I've built. So I've got multiple screens in here that I've created. You can see I've been playing around with a lot of different things in here, but it does just have a lot of logic. And like I mentioned, I'm not a programmer. You do kind of have to understand concepts, kind of like writing formulas in Excel, to be able to learn how these formulas work. So there's a lot going on in here and a lot of logic and just, a lot of functionality. Like I mentioned, I spent hours on it, but that's your Power Apps option. So let me go back to my slide deck here. In summary, you'll discover this when you start talking to the business and gathering requirements from them, where it always seems like it's going to be simple from the start. But in summary, every form and process is going to be different. You're going to have different requirements, different considerations, different levels of complexity. Everything in all these comparisons that I've showed you is going to vary. So just before getting started with any form that you need to build, go ahead and figure out what all those factors are and weigh your pros and cons to decide which product that you're going to need to use. For example, if it needs to be filled out anonymously or one way, Microsoft Forms is going to be a great candidate. And that one's almost, like the easiest one to decide upon. But I've created a little comparison chart I can send you if you email me. Here's my email address, laura.rogers@iwmentor.com. And I can send you that. And don't forget to rate my session. And does anybody have any questions? Thanks, everybody, for coming.